Did you know that there are people out there that consume mud and dirt? It's a real sign of poverty when you have to resort to sub-slop consumption. Anyway, let's talk about the act man.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
I must stress that I don't hate this guy for who he is as a person. I do think that some of his videos are good. I also don't think that you're bad for enjoying his content. Much like with the... You are not wrong if you enjoy what he puts out. However, I don't like lies, and I don't think the Act Man is a good YouTuber. I, in fact, believe the Act Man to be a raging, hypocritical, attention-loving, view-hungry husk of what he tries to portray himself as. His videos, despite occasionally being a diamond in the rough, are mostly very, very rough. That is to say, they're sloppy shit that reveal who this guy is and that his priorities are far, far from what he would like you to believe they are. Now, I don't expect people to know everything, so let's set the stage briefly and establish who the Act Man is. The Act Man is, or should I say was, back when he was smaller, just a regular guy who enjoyed video games and making content on the things he likes. I think, or at least would like to think, that he still believes himself to be this to some degree. Hell, some people who still watch him, or those who find his channel right now, will probably have this exact impression of him. He does what you'd expect a modern gaming YouTuber to typically do. Reviews, gaming-themed commentary videos, and the occasional roast, making sure to be as easy as digest and appealing to as many people as possible. Because that's not gonna come back to bite him in the ass at all, I'm sure. So yeah, at over 1 million subscribers, he's a successful gaming YouTuber on the surface. On the surface. On the surface. Because when you dig a little deeper, the Act Man, well... I believe it would be really unfair if I didn't preface my next section without going over some mentions of the positives he has in his favor. However, and this is without intending to poison the well or anything, you'll notice a pattern or two with a lot of what I'm about to say. Because it builds into and then upon how I described them in the previous section. Leave a 100 emoji in the comments if you notice a pattern before I say it. Again, I don't want to poison the well here, but get ready because this foundation is gonna burn down faster than an expensive Nike shoe store during a social justice demonstration. Let's go. The Act Man, for all his faults, does have a history of mentioning and occasionally actually discussing bad practices in gaming. After all, his image is that of just being some guy who likes video games and cares about their quality and how gamers are treated. Loot boxes, season passes, microtransactions, defenses of corporate greed. He's talked about all of them in the past to some extent. Recently, the Act Man made a video talking about why gamers are mad about the Nintendo Switch 2, in which he spends a minority of the video talking about why gamers are mad about the Nintendo Switch 2. He makes a brief reference to the price of games going from a standard of $70 to $90 after 15 years at 60 and, reads a small Reddit comment addressing the defense using inflation to justify the price hike. Okay, no mention of the fact that the cost of old games was primarily due to a smaller market, no mention of the production costs being astronomically higher given that every game copy was essentially a unique SD card, something which by the way is way more complex than copying some files to a Blu-ray disc by the way, no mention of the modern bloat in developer teams that spend longer making every texture hyper-realistic than designing a good game, no! A small Reddit comment comparing house prices and median household income in the 90s to today. Okay, that's his responsibility done as far as he gives a shit. Let's talk about how much FPS the Switch 2 can reach, right? Another example of a positive in his favor would be his politics in video games video. I promise I'll be brief here. In this video, he correctly points out the ridiculousness of the idea that every game is political, bringing up the notable example of Tetris, a game originating in Soviet Russia that is about as apolitical as anything can get. Later on in the video, he contrasts the political tone of BioShock and Dragon Age Veilguard, the latter of which, as he says, is so blatant that it effectively serves as a way to educate the player on the political point of the writers, a scathing condemnation of wokeness and diversity politics in video games. You know, a really good point in a video of really good points, Act Man. This is honestly an amazing foundation to talk about the issue of wokeness in video games, and I would love it if you addressed the root cause of the problem. Wait, we're moving on. No. Alright, another good segment that's really well made. Let's address the subject. God damn it, can you please actually address the cause of the problem or explain the logic behind the issue instead of just listing common examples? For fuck's sake! This is a problem I have with many of the Actman's better videos. Just to clarify, he could disagree with me at every turn. That's not the problem here. The problem is that even in the videos where he is objectively correct, it's just because he limits himself to talking about obvious examples and little else. The pattern, for those of you paying attention, is that he always sticks to talking about things on a surface level in order to be as easy to digest for regular consumers and little else. On the surface, this might be fine, and it might even sound fine to you in general, until you realize that the direct effect that this has on his videos is that, as lengthy as they might be, they end up being little more than summaries of the what, but never of the why. This isn't because he wants to be as easily digestible as possible necessarily, it's because he wants to remain inoffensive. To be, if you will, the enlightened centrist. And this, dear viewer, this attempt to seem as digestible, inoffensive, topically centrist doesn't so much open up a crack in a net as it does open up a big fucking chasm for him to dive into. And this is because every time someone tries to portray themselves as an enlightened centrist and to be wildly appealing while retaining the facade of having an opinion, it leads only to a descent down a path that's nearly impossible to climb out of with any integrity remaining. A miserable path that begins with... Why does the Actman unironically defend games from companies that embody everything he claims to be against? No, really, why? Regardless of how deep into the discussion on the state of the gaming industry you are, there are some things that everyone in gaming already knows. Everybody knows that EA will put out a sports game or 10 every year that barely change from the previous ones. Everybody knows that mobile games are hubs for advertisement, and everybody knows, or rather everyone should know, that modern Call of Duty experience is something along the lines of that. It may seem shocking to people who haven't played a Call of Duty game in the last not fucking long enough. But Call of Duty, in case you aren't aware, has gone down the rabbit hole that everyone could see was going down since at least COD Black Ops 3. I mean, sure, there's modified movement mechanics and prettier lighting techniques, but there's barely any changes to the loop except for that time they changed engines, and, of course, promising everything from here to the sun only to charge you 3 kidneys and a half for a skin. Skins which have more effort put into them than the last 3 entries of the Call of Duty franchise combined. Black Ops 6, yes, Black Ops 6 has, unironically, skins that cost more than the last 4 games I've bought combined, and guess what? It's still basically the same shit you bought last time. What I'm trying to get at here is that Call of Duty has a very, very long track record of being barely different from the last, while nickel and diming their players at every turn on top of already having a high cost of entry. What does the Actman do, you wonder? Black Ops 6 is too good to be true. Treyarch is cooking with Black Ops 6. Black Ops 6 campaign traumatized me. Wow, man, you know, I can't think for myself, and my favorite YouTuber is telling me that it's too good to be true, that it's amazing. He played the beta a few months before release and says it's gonna be great. There is absolutely no precedent for being cautious about committing to a AAA game release, guys. It's gonna be fucking great. He played the beta after all. Well, color me surprised and call me a diversity hire, because I did not see that one coming. You know, some people like to call me conspiratorial, and I get that. But can you really sit there and tell me with a straight face that the guy who had made a video talking about the decline in AAA gaming quality didn't know that it was retarded to join the hype for the running stereotype of modern AAA gaming that is Call of Duty? No, you can't. You know what happened here? The Actman, in his typical drive to join the hype and capitalize on the views, consumer advocacy be damned, he simply looked at what was popular and easy to please the regular viewer and joined in, making videos that reaffirm the biases of people who can do dick all but consume the Call of Duty content, and most likely roping people in the process who trust his views into buying a Call of Duty that he ditched the second it was socially permissible to do so. You, who do not have the money he does, spent a good hard-earned chunk of it into playing the crap he went from calling awesome to disappointing in a whole 5 minutes, while he got the views for joining in on the hype and the views for trashing it later on. I would like to say that this is a coincidence, that this is a one-off, a coincidence that he roped you into buying the exact shit he warned against previously. But, as you are about to see with my next example and sections, it isn't a one-off. It is a part of a much, much longer running trend. A trend fueled by a hunger for clicks and views that leads him to disregard any ethics and responsibility to just say whatever the fuck is perceived as popular and reaping the benefits while screwing the viewer he claims to give a shit about. I'm gonna do you, possible Actman viewer, a favor and say something that he never will to you. You know these betas that you can pay to get access to a few months before launch? Battlefield 2042, Black Ops 6, and so on. They're not betas. They never were. That's not how betas work. They're demos. Don't buy into them. It's a tactic using fear of missing out in order to get you to commit early on. And if it turns out poorly, well, you joined everybody in. You didn't want to be left out now, did you? And they'll fix it because they have like 2 months or whatever the fuck to fix it and until it comes out fully. It's a tactic that every single fucking major gaming YouTuber knows about, but very few of them will actually tell you about it, because if they did, they wouldn't be able to reap the benefits of guzzling the dicks of corporations and getting the views by joining in on the hype and giving the socially permissible opinion. Anyway, now that you know all of that information, settle in because this is where shit gets fast real quick. Payday 3. What to say about Payday 3? It's shit and you should have seen it coming. You know who didn't see it coming, however? The Actman, because as we know, even if he had the patience to do one Google search to find out that this dev studio has survived solely off of microtransactions and DLC for the last 10 years and that the people who made it great in the first place are gone, he would have seen it coming. And maybe he did see it coming, maybe he did do his Google searches, but he didn't obviously show that off. Why? Well, let's take a look at his video then titled Payday 3 is a certified banger, where he got access to the closed beta. Why the fuck did you get invited to the beta? And where he gives us his thoughts on it.
Tough questions require tough answers. I was invited by the Payday 3 developers Starbreeze to go out to New York and take part in one of the coolest pre-release gaming events I've ever been to. I mean, it's only the second pre-release event I've ever been to, but it's gonna be hard to beat.
Wow, Actman. That sounds really cool. And why the fuck did you get invited to the beta?
They brought me and a bunch of other content creators to a real bank in New York, and then they all held us hostage in a mock robbery, and that was just awesome. Amazing performance. So I met up with some really cool content creators. I asked one of them if he wanted to play a robbery game. He said yes.
Wow, you know, Actman, that sounds fun. That actually sounds super fun. But really, Actman, why the fuck did you get invited to the beta?
Then we had 2 hours to play Payday 3, and a new heist that wasn't available in the most recent beta.
Damn, dude, it sounds like they really rolled out the red carpet for you, Actman. A real grand old time, and why the fuck did you get invited to the beta?
So consider this a first impressions video from someone who went into this completely blind, having never played Payday before.
And that's the red flag right there. So red that Vosh is gooning over it. See, I did the impossible. Basic research. Turns out that the studio that survived pretty much solely on microtransactions and DLC for the last 10 years decided to specifically not invite dedicated Payday YouTubers to the Payday dedicated event. So much so that when fans turned up thinking it was public, they recognized absolutely nobody. Instead, Payday 3 devs held events that, as far as I could tell, gathered people who specifically hadn't played Payday before or played it very little, twice, and then held them in a very controlled environment to get them to make videos on it and make sure they had their perfect experience to make content on. They did eventually have a beta you could sign up for, but that public sign-up beta was, what, a month before release, so it's almost like they were trying to hide something, you know? Almost like they knew it would take far, far longer for these YouTubers to make their videos than the people who would get access to that public sign-up beta. Almost like it would cause an effect of people first complaining and then having a bunch of popular YouTubers saying it's actually awesome. It's almost like they were specifically trying to delay people figuring out that the game wasn't exactly in line with expectations by preventing the very people who would notice these things from actually participating. And getting the spotlight, of course. Because who cares if these small YouTubers are all complaining about these big issues in the game? Because really big YouTubers, who you should trust more than smaller YouTubers, just look at their subscriber count, are all making videos in September saying how good the game is. There is a term for this, by the way. It's called audience manipulation. Call me conspiratorial if you want, but yeah, no, when they announce the game is going to be always online, a very unpopular thing, then bait a bunch of big viewer base retards into fawning over meticulously crafted versions of the game, thus drowning out negative discourse all right before release. I can't help but maybe, just maybe, be suspicious over this entire thing. To the surprise of anyone with the basic capability of pattern recognition, something present in fucking birds but not in a lot of modern consumers, Payday 3 turned out to be shit. A game that did not function on release. A cooperative game that didn't let people cooperate because it didn't have fucking voice chat for over a year after launch. A game that was so watered down and functioned more like a late stage alpha than a full release. A deceptive pile of shit that many people bought into because of retards like the Act Man, who published a video gobbling the balls of this game 2 days before release, making no effort to ask why this studio, belonging to an already money-hungry publisher, was treating them the way they were, or even fucking mentioning the controversy surrounding this game. He didn't even do the basic effort of maybe playing the game that came before it just to actually be somewhat informed on Payday before going into this fucking heavily curated event about Payday 3. You know, the bare fucking minimum. So, you might be wondering, did the Actman question any of the things I just mentioned? Did he issue a retraction on his gigantic shilling session over this game? Did he make a follow-up at least pretending to give a shit over the fact that he did the bidding of the corporate hacks he pretends to dislike? No, he just changed one word in the video title but kept the thumbnail and description. He did eventually pin a comment in the comment section of that video, but that was only after people roasted him over it. Still, he excuses it by saying, maybe in a year or two it'll be better. But yeah, I'm fucking sure of it. Just excuse the bad practices by saying it'll be better in a year or two. Or how about the whole Assassin's Creed Shadows shit? You know, Assassin's Creed Shadows, we've talked about this on the channel. A shit, barely functioning game so driven by diversity and inclusivity and woke ideology that it was almost fucking banned in the country it was set in. A game made by a company infamous for its greed, lack of creativity, and ideological pandering. AC Shadows really was something special. For people who wanted to make videos clowning on Ubisoft, that is.
Amber, your mother and father still together?
No.
Really, anyone with a brain could see this one coming from a mile and a half away, but remember, a good part of the controversy surrounding Assassin's Creed Shadows was linked to ideology. So, what does our favorite acting centrist, Mr. I Defend Consumers here say? What does the guy who wants gamers to be listened to more often do? He pretends to dislike ideological debates being had within gaming by defending the corporation pushing ideological debates within gaming. Because of fucking course he does. Leave the multi-million-dollar company alone, how dare you? Now, some will try to argue that he didn't explicitly defend Ubisoft, but come on now, when you're making posts like this, trying to show how successful you think Assassin's Creed Shadows was, and using it to brag to people who were hoping it would fail, well, you're a shill. You're just a fucking shill. Just fucking admit it. You're a fucking shill. The Actman really is just a fucking shill, even if he realizes it or not. He's an egotistical, low-effort shill wearing the mask of a consumer advocate. You could even call him a... Yeah, you knew this segment was gonna be in here, didn't you? I could turn this segment into a standalone video, but I'm not going to. This segment, much to my chagrin, already has most of its foundation set thanks to the previous ones. There's just one thing that's missing. Are you aware of his hot take series? Basically, it's a series where he takes outrageous statements people make about a given subject and laughs at them. Typically, this is an easy thing to get right, and his other hot takes videos work well enough. I personally have no issue with most of them and even appreciate them. But what happens when you take an ideologically compromised grifter that just parrots what he perceives to be popular and shove him into a discussions on pronouns being an option in Bethesda's game Starfield? Now, Starfield needs no introduction, and my thoughts on Starfield aren't relevant to the conversation. All you need to know is that Starfield is a Bethesda game, and Bethesda games, whether you love them or not, have been getting progressively dumbed down over the past 20 years to appeal, or to try to appeal, to bigger audiences. In other words, the more recent the Bethesda game, the more simplified it is over whatever Bethesda game came before it. This, in case you aren't aware, is a bit of a problem when Bethesda's games are franchises and genres that specifically do not benefit from simplification. They are, in fact, genres and franchises that benefit from complexity. See Fallout New Vegas for reference. Moreover, Bethesda's games have a nasty habit of chasing trends and just doing whatever they think is popular, but being so low effort that this practice only highlights the deficiencies of their games. See the Operation Anchorage DLC or the entirety of Fallout 76 for reference on that. Now that you know all of this, what do you think the inclusions of pronouns in Starfield was actually for? Was it because the game was that expansive and complex that the pronouns really did play a crucial role in it? Or was it to pander to modern audiences and include something that has absolutely no meaning in the game itself? Well, it really is a Bethesda-style choice, because whichever answer you gave is irrelevant. At least to the Actman, that is, because he doesn't give a shit about any of that. He decided to completely ignore this entire conversation and just make fun of Az from Heels vs. Babyface for sounding too angry when he ranted about the subject. This actually pisses me off. Az was made fun of and effectively turned into an internet meme just because of this by people who completely ignored the very simple point he was making. It really goes to show that people don't give a shit about the content of what you're saying and only care about how you say it. I legitimately believe that I could walk up to a random person nowadays and tell them to kill themselves in the nicest way possible. And so long as I kept a cool head and said it in a very approachable and moderate way, I think that they would probably do it. That's the only way I can explain how it was that there's so many people just didn't get the point of what Az was saying. More likely they never watched it and were just joining in on the fucking hate trend because they were bored. Among them, and particularly at fault for turning it into a much bigger thing than it had any right to be, was the Actman. Because on top of being a disingenuous prick, I'll get to that, the Actman effectively used the guy he knew wasn't ill-intentioned multiple times for that sweet social media engagement and those lovely views that he loves to get on his YouTube channel. Completely ignored what Az was saying, picked up the popular talking points off of social media and jumped on the hate wagon against him because that was something he could get views from. And the way in which he completely brushed Az aside just to make fun of him, the way in which he completely disregarded all of his arguments was something so fucking stupid that I still can't believe a guy who allegedly spends dozens of hours making a single video can even in any way come up with. It still boggles the mind as to how he could actually include this stupid fucking point in his video. Just take a look at this.
Okay, so this is what normal people see when a game gives them an option to select their gender or sex or pronouns. And this is what Captain Sexual Assault sees.
Kill yourself now. Just kill yourself now. If you're looking for nothing, then you will take a top. Kill yourself now. Just kill yourself now.
Fuck Bethesda and fuck the political radical weirdos in the Western gaming industry. Staining it with ideological clown world bullshit. What should first and foremost be an escape from it? Back to Skyrim. What? You're going back to Skyrim? That woke leftist nonsense that forces you to pick a race at the start? God, what a fucking libtard, man. This guy is so what? You see how easy it is to turn your grift against you? You see how easy it is to imitate it? I don't like ideology in my games. Now let me go back to the video game that has themes of imperialism in it.
Laws and labor structures tight. Memories of...
They've sent me a moron!
Oh goddammit, fucking Jesus Christ. Yes, he simply saw what some obnoxiously loud retards were saying on the internet and parroted the argument verbatim that this is no different from being asked if you're a boy or a girl in old video games. By the way, Actman, that comparison is just so slightly disingenuous because Skyrim is a fantasy game where a lot of races exist. Pronouns in Starfield are literally only a factor with your character and no other character in the game. You know what, let's all hold hands and help the Actman to figure out the problem with this one in an age-appropriate way, shall we? Alright, let's see, one... Oh, this is really hard, okay, one, two... okay, that's two options I have here in Pokemon, okay. Now let's look at, Starfield, alright,
And he told me...
I am counting. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much.
Oh, alright, I see. These are two different numbers. 2 is a different number than 3. I wonder if there's something more to this topic that he might just be completely fucking missing out on. The Actman started to feel a little heat following this entire controversy because he did unfairly target Az instead of, you know, sticking to the point. So, Az called the Actman out for his disingenuous representation of him and started to point out the fact that the Actman was saying one thing and doing another. People started to realize that, hey, maybe the Act Man is just being a shill for views and grifting, acting like a disingenuous prick all the way. So this fucking, the Act Man, this fucking
Moron.
decided that in order to save his skin and seem like the adult in the room, he decided, and I can't believe he actually did this, he decided that the best way to address this controversy and seem like the adult in the room was to leak the DMs he had with Az prior to his Starfield hot takes video coming out, and these DMs showed that he was claiming to want to talk and to have dialogue, but that he had already finished the video and couldn't do anything about it because he says, as he says, he works 35 to 40 hours on a video.
Why did you post the video? There's a few reasons. Number one, this Twitter exchange took place over a week, and I had no indication until I finished the video that Az was down to talk to me. This is pretty bad timing. I just spent 30, 35, 40 hours on a video. What am I gonna do? Just scrap it?
And this guy, this fucking guy, is so unfathomably retarded that he didn't realize this massive issue. He didn't realize that he was basically admitting to this in this fucking copium of a video that he put out, attempting to seem like the bigger guy in the situation. He knows that a lot of his viewers don't actually pay close attention to what he says. He knows that a lot of his viewers don't actually really dig deep into the words he is fucking regurgitating at them. So he didn't even think twice about it. So he simply reveled in the views and in the engagement, but you know what? There is something about this that a lot of fucking people didn't catch on to, and that I'm actually surprised a lot of people didn't talk about, that further prove how unfathomably disingenuous this guy is. But did you notice what he said there about spending 30, 35, 40 hours making a video? Well, two things there. For one, I don't fucking believe you. But assuming that you did spend 30, 35, 40 hours, as you say, making the video, you cannot reasonably expect anyone to think that you would have to spend another 30, 35, 40 hours remaking the video just by removing the absolute disingenuous shitpile you threw towards Az. Moreover, is that 30, 35, 40 hour thing a standard of yours? Do you usually spend 30, 35, 40 hours making videos? Because a lot of your fucking videos is just you reading comments, or you mostly reading comments off of the internet with humor and commentary that anyone could come up with by simply scrolling down their social media page. I mean, just look at his recent video, The Never-Ending Decline of Bungie, which is basically just him reading his social media feed for the entire video. 90% of this fucking video is him simply reading Twitter posts talking about the fact that Bungie has a history of plagiarizing content from other people on the internet, such as art styles. In fact, remember the examples of the videos that I brought up throughout this entire fucking video? Well, I'm gonna tell you a secret pattern that I've been keeping, you know, just for the people that pay attention. The videos I picked from the Act Man to make this video weren't selected at random, actually. They were selected because all of them are videos that resort to one of three things, or a combination of all three. Those being commentary videos in line with unscripted or bullet-pointed first impressions, commentary with about as much depth as reading a few short statements on social media, or outright reading a bunch of posts on social media and then intersecting all of them with a few moments where he pretends to actually have scripted something and not just be reading it. I think that that little tidbit of information there was only there to try to protect himself, to try to come up with the excuse as to why he simply couldn't go back on it. A little lie in order to save his skin and to seem like he was just backed into a corner and there was nothing he could do about it. And you know what? Instead of just calling him a whole host of names, I think the most appropriate way to refer to the Act Man is by calling him what he truly is. When he's not recording, I don't doubt that the Act Man is not a terrible person when it comes to actually, you know, being a fucking person. I have no reason to believe he is a bad person in general, nor do I make the assertion that he is overall. But what is absolutely fucking unquestionable about the Act Man is that this person is so unbelievably focused on being the centrist, appealing to everybody, being the cool guy, that he has fallen down a cliff where he has unironically become a shill, a grifter, and a liar, who changes his personality depending on whatever controversy he's involved in at the time, or what he perceives to be more convenient for him in his quest to get himself views. I get wanting more views on YouTube. I get catering your content around mass appeal. Really, I do. But at least be fucking straightforward about it. At least say that, yes, I'm just trying to appeal to as many people as possible. But the Act-Mam doesn't do that. The Act-Mam simply sticks to trying to be as fucking milquetoast as possible, trying to be as centrist as possible, and has developed a fucking ego that reaches the peak of Mount Everest, because at this point, he maybe just can't see how stupid he fucking is. But I believe he does actually realize it. He does actually know exactly what he's doing, and he has a massive impact that just screws over the very viewers he seems to care about. And I say seems to care about because that's just what he claimed. He doesn't stand up for what he believes in. He never did. All he does is shift whatever he has to say whenever it's fucking convenient in order to appear as approachable as possible, all the while screwing you over. A sign of the rot that has taken over a lot of YouTubers. A lot of YouTubers who used to be creative, fun, or at least honest about what they believed in, no matter how stupid it was. Very rarely is it possible to detect a hint of honesty with the Act-Man because it constantly fucking changes, and in case you haven't realized, that is why people call him the Act-Man, because he's a mam, a cuck that bends over to the whims of the fucking YouTube algorithm or whatever the fuck he thinks is gonna get him more engagement on Twitter. Because above all things, what matters is people singing his fucking praises than actually having standards for one. Fuck longevity and long-term implications of the actions he takes. Fuck him, just fuck him wholeheartedly. And fuck the consequences of his actions that people like you have to put up with because he has the money to deal with it and he can simply switch opinions whenever it's convenient, while you now have to put up with having spent money on shitty products, corporations being validated because big YouTubers simply agreed with them and simply did their bidding, and on top of that, you are unable to have a simple conversation in whatever form you think is most adequate because grifters like the Act-Man will come along and completely hijack it just for the sake of easy clicks, views, engagement, and ratioing people on Twitter. And you can't dare to call them out because they'll just repeat the cycle once again and people will start saying that he's on a fucking redemption arc. Only to be surprised when the cycle repeats yet again and we go further down the depths of being unable to be coherent as a fucking community that just wants to play video games. Big YouTubers are not your friends. I might be giving you a lot of good advice here, but I am not your friend in the colloquial sense. If you would like me to be, join my Discord server. Their audiences are simply way too big to actually give a shit about anyone in particular, and there comes a point, no matter how well-intentioned a YouTuber might be, that a disconnect is created between them and their fan base. And while I am not saying that there aren't any good YouTubers out there who actually give a shit about the people they are making videos for whatever reason they might be doing so, such as hobby or job, one thing that you have to learn to do is to disconnect yourself from YouTubers that simply don't represent what your interests are. I actually care about my viewers, but I am not the arbiter of truth there. You have to make that conclusion by yourself. And as a former viewer and subscriber of the Act-Man, I have come to my conclusion, and my conclusion is that this guy is not worth my time, is not worth your time, and while you might agree with what he says now, know that every single sign is there showing that he's just saying it in order to seem more approachable to you, aka the people he has lost the attention of, by simply saying the shit that is convenient for him at the time in order to fill his own pockets. Why do you think that his Halo show review applies exactly almost word for word to his Fallout show review, but he hates one and likes the other? You should be able to figure out by yourself why he does that by now. Stop giving people like this clicks, stop giving him attention, and stop taking anything he says seriously. And dear Act-Man, have some fucking integrity for once and stop polluting the gaming community with your shit and admit when you are wrong instead of simply turning around and switching whatever makeup you have at the moment. Because a whore might dress differently on a daily basis, but it's still a whore at the end of the day. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.